Look at your hands for a second. Really look at them. Those hands exist because of a chain of survival so improbable, so absurdly fragile, that statisticians wouldn't bet on it. Go back far enough through your family tree and you stop finding names. You stop finding faces. You stop finding language. Eventually, you find a creature hunched in the dirt, cold, starving, terrified, with no name, no shelter, and no guarantee that tomorrow will come. That creature is you. Or rather, it's the reason you're here at all. You exist because every single one of your ancestors, across hundreds of thousands of years, chose to keep breathing when the world gave them every reason to stop. Today, we're going to walk through 5 moments in history when that chain almost snapped. 5 times your bloodline brushed up against extinction and somehow, impossibly, didn't, ranked from devastating to nearly unthinkable. By the end of this, you won't just understand history. You'll understand what it cost to make you. The Ice Age, when the Earth tried to freeze us out, approximately 20,000 years ago. Imagine waking up every morning knowing that the cold might kill you before the hunger does. And the hunger is already winning. 20,000 years ago, during the last glacial maximum, ice sheets 2 miles thick swallowed entire continents. North America, Europe, Asia, all buried. Global temperatures were 10 degrees Fahrenheit colder than today, and today isn't exactly warm in most places. The wind didn't just bite, it ate. Your ancestors lived in mammoth bone shelters they built themselves, wore animal hides they'd scraped clean with flint, and hunted prey that outweighed them by thousands of pounds. The cave lion, bigger than any predator alive today, shared the landscape with them. So did the woolly rhinoceros, so did the cold itself, which was its own kind of predator. A cut on your foot wasn't an inconvenience, it was a death sentence on a 2-week delay. There were no antibiotics, no hospitals, no backup plan, an infected wound, a broken bone, a fever. Any of these could end your entire lineage in a matter of days. And yet your ancestors didn't just survive. They painted. On cave walls and flickering firelight, they made art. They left behind proof that even in the most brutal conditions, the human spirit insisted on being more than just alive. They weren't just surviving the Ice Age, they were living through it. The agricultural revolution. The trade-off that slowly broke us, approximately 10,000 years ago. We talk about farming like it was a breakthrough. Like one morning, somewhere in the Fertile Crescent, someone had a genius idea and everything got better. The truth is darker, stranger, and far more human than that. Farming wasn't a choice, it was a desperation move. Populations were growing, prey animals were disappearing, and hunting was becoming a losing bet. So people stopped moving, they settled down, planted seeds, and waited. And in doing so, they accidentally built the perfect conditions for misery. When you pack thousands of humans into a small area alongside livestock, disease doesn't just spread, it evolves. Smallpox, measles, typhoid, most of the great plagues of history were born in those early farming villages. Before agriculture, you rarely slept next to your own waste. After it, contaminated water became a way of life. We traded freedom for food security, and then the food security failed anyway, every time it rained too much or not enough. Ancient skeletons from early farming communities tell a story that history books rarely do. Shorter stature, rotted teeth, bones showing signs of chronic malnutrition. The hunter-gatherers who came before them were, by almost every physical measure, healthier, but they were also fewer, and the world was filling up. Your ancestors made a brutal bargain, and they paid for it in bone and blood. But here you are, descended from the ones who survived the transition that changed everything. The Mongol invasions. When war became a force of nature, 13th century. There have been many conquerors throughout history. There has been only one Genghis Khan. What the Mongols built wasn't just an empire, it was a systematic, methodical engine of annihilation. The most efficient killing machine the pre-modern world ever produced. If you lived in Central Asia, Persia, China, or Eastern Europe in the 1200s, and you saw a dust cloud rising on the horizon, you didn't have time to run. You barely had time to pray. The Mongol cavalry could cover 100 miles a day. Their horse archers could hit a moving target from 300 yards while riding at full gallop. Entire cities that had stood for 1,000 years were erased in days. Not just conquered, erased. The population killed, the buildings burned, the fields salted. In some regions, the Mongol invasions left behind a silence that lasted for centuries. The land itself forgot what it meant to be inhabited. Approximately 10% of all humans on Earth killed historians SSE.
Approximately equals 10% of all humans on Earth. Historians estimate the invasions killed around 40 million people, roughly 10% of the entire global population. In some areas, the population didn't recover for 200 years. The cities of Samarkand, Baghdad, and Kiev were so thoroughly destroyed that archaeologists still find the layers of ash when they dig. If your ancestry traces through any of those regions, someone in your family line hid, ran, or was taken. And somehow, impossibly, they made it out. Their survival is why you exist. The Black Death, when death stopped being personal, 1347 to 1353. In the autumn of 1347, 12 ships docked in the Sicilian port of Messina. The sailors on board were either dead or dying, covered in black, weeping boils. The port authorities ordered the ships back out to sea immediately, but it was already too late. What followed was the single greatest demographic catastrophe in recorded human history. The Black Death, bubonic plague, didn't spread slowly. It moved like fire through dry grass, carried by the fleas on rats that lived in every grain store, every ship, every home in medieval Europe. You could catch it from a handshake, from shared bread, from simply breathing the same air as someone who'd breathed the wrong air the day before. The disease was faster than rumor. By the time a village heard it was coming, it had already arrived. Symptoms appeared within days: swollen lymph nodes the size of apples, skin that turned black and ruptured, blood in the lungs, blood in the vomit. Death usually followed within a week. Doctors, dressed in those haunting beaked masks packed with herbs they believed would filter out the plague's smell, were almost entirely useless. The church, unable to explain or stop it, began to fracture. People began to question everything they'd been told about God, about suffering, about what it meant to be human. 30 to 60% of Europe's population gone in 5 years. In some cities, corpses piled up faster than they could be buried. Entire villages were abandoned midlife, tables still set, fields half-harvested. Between 1/3 and 1/2 of all Europeans were dead within 5 years. If your roots are in Europe, the math is staggering. Your ancestors survived something that killed nearly every other family around them. That wasn't luck, that was the rarest, most stubborn kind of biology. And it's in you.
The Toba supervolcano, the day we almost ceased to exist, approximately 74,000 years ago. Nothing else on this list comes close to what happened 74,000 years ago. Not the plague, not the Mongols, not even the Ice Age. What happened at Toba was something else entirely, a wound so deep it nearly ended the entire human story before it had truly begun. The Toba supervolcano, on the island of what is now Sumatra, didn't just erupt, it detonated. It released more than 670 cubic miles of ash and debris, enough to bury the entire United States under a layer of rock. The explosion was heard, in some form, across the entire planet. And that was only the beginning. The ash cloud blocked the sun, not for days, not for weeks, for years, possibly a decade. A volcanic winter descended on Earth, dropping global temperatures by up to 27 degrees Fahrenheit. Plants died, animals that ate plants died, animals that ate those animals died. Entire ecosystems collapsed like dominoes, from the tropics to the poles. For years, the sun rose every morning and gave nothing, no warmth, no growth, just a pale ghost light through a sky choked with ash, and the slow, relentless silence of a world forgetting how to live. Total human population reduced to fewer than 3,000 individuals. Think about that number. Not 3 million, not 300,000, 3,000. Some genetic studies suggest it may have been even fewer. The entire human species compressed into a handful of isolated groups, clinging to the edges of a dying world with nothing but their bodies, their knowledge, and each other. There was no coming back from this for most of them. The genetic diversity of the human species today is remarkably, hauntingly low, a direct echo of that bottleneck.